welcome back to Terp Trends. This week, I got to sit down with Seth, the president and CEO of Control Ltd. Seth is a practicing pharmacist with nearly 2 decades of experience across retail, hospital, clinical, and dispensary settings. Recognizing a crucial need for precision in medical cannabis dosing, he co-founded Control Ltd. With Soph and Patricia Smith, aka Dishy, with the goal to bring innovation and reliability to patients everywhere. Control Ltd's groundbreaking RSO dosing device is already being utilized in Pennsylvania's medical program, is revolutionizing how patients manage their cannabis routines. This device offers universal compatibility with standard 1 ml RSO syringes, enhanced flow control for mess-free dispensing, and consistent dosing for both full and half-gram amounts. With its simplicity and its durability, it takes the guesswork out of dispensing, empowering patients to medicate safely and effectively. Together, Seth, Soph, and Dishy bring a wealth of expertise from pharmacy and engineering to patient advocacy, driving their mission to make precise dosing accessible for all. This is Terp Trends. Let's dive in.
Nice, thanks. My name's Seth with Control Ltd. I have two partners, Soph and Patricia Smith. We call her Dishy. But we kind of got started in the industry back in 2019. I was started working at the dispensary with Dishy and went through the learning curve with everything in PA medical market, and then came up with our company and our device. But my background, basically, I graduated from pharmacy school back in 2005, but I was in pharmacy a little bit before then, just as a student. So I've been in pharmacy since 2001. So pretty many years, 20 plus years in it. And about 2019, got a little, I wouldn't say burned out, but basically I call it the Groundhog Day effect, where I would go into work and it's, the same people come in with the same problems, and, you're just dealing with the same issues over and over. And I kind of got sick of it. I'm like, I just need something new. Some other things were going on in my life at the time, and I'm like, I just need a break. I needed to switch things up. So saw that there was an opening at the dispensary. I'm like, man, this is awesome. I want to try it out, see how things go. A little timid at first. I haven't dealt with any cannabis in a while. So going into that, it's like a little bit of it was scary. I'm like, hey, when you guys hired me on, you guys are gonna go through the ropes, train me, like show me what's up. And at the time, I didn't realize no one else knew what was going on either. You know what I mean? Like, you go into it, and they're like, yeah, well, don't worry about it. We'll make sure you're squared away. And then I actually got on when they're actually opening up the dispensary. So, I was able to like go from the fresh start where they're like, planning out the build and how are we going to start selling, and like what's the, how does the, the whole thing start. So it was nice just to get from the ground up. And turns out that they weren't going to give me any training and things like that. It was pretty much learn as you go. So
Yeah, and I mean that was I think the experience of probably 95% of medical professionals that were brought into the beginning of the program, because I'm sitting down with our med pros at Terravita and breaking down different usages of cannabis, kind of going through like the medical realm of it for how I think it would apply, because I haven't gone through any of your guys' like profession or schooling or anything like that. So, and from what I grabbed from them, like the environments that you guys were used to and the way you did medicine before ended up being like kind of different than how they were trying to apply it to the way they were doing medicine in like the cannabis realm. So before you jumped into that, did you have any previous experience with cannabis? Because I know a lot of them, like it was very new to them. They weren't really users or anything. So what was that like for you?
yeah, I mean, basically college experience, usually in college,
Nice.
that's pretty much it. Blown smoke through the
A little
toilet paper
spliff?
rolls,
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
mask the smell. I mean, I did. There was a class in college that I took that kind of delved into cannabis use and other controlled drugs, and kind of went over just some of the benefits. Like at the time that I took the class, it was just kind of what we were doing here in the States was just very minimal. I remember one of the things that the professor was like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of promise, especially with at the time they were looking into like glaucoma and reducing the
Hmm.
ocular pressure. And they're like, yeah, it works great. But, to actually get a significant reduction, you're gonna have to smoke a joint like every hour. So,
Wow.
the benefits there, but then you have the risk, the other side of it. It's like, they weren't there yet in terms of like how are we going to utilize it without causing other risk factors and things like that.
Yeah, which I think we're definitely finally diving into now as we're getting more into the science and just studies on it, which when more and more states becoming lenient towards the laws, which I think is great. So what was the environment like before jumping into the dispensary, like your day to day in the pharmaceutical line?
It's the typical retail setting. I mean, you the part where it was easier for me in that setting is, the doctors would write a script, everything was all laid out. The medication that came through that you're dispensing has already all been studied. You're getting dosages that have all been studied. Where's a good therapeutic range? What dose actually works for the patient? So, for example, if someone comes in, they have high blood pressure. The doctor's going to write them a script. You're going to give them 5 milligrams of X medication. They take it twice a day, and they're going to go back to the doctor a couple months and see where it goes. With cannabis, it's a lot different. Like everybody's going to take everybody has that different therapeutic effect where that amount of dose is going to affect them differently than somebody else. Whether it's because it's tolerance level, whether it's because of their gender, their their genetics and things like that. So a lot of different plays when you switch over into cannabis, and that's where a lot of the scary parts came in. Where when I started working in the dispensary, I'm like, man, how am I going to use what I learned or been doing for the last 19 years or whatever
Yeah.
in the traditional pharmaceutical sense, and how do I transition that into counseling somebody that's using cannabis? So one of the things that helped me was, look, there are similarities in every different subject, right? So when you're looking at the traditional pharmaceutical world, you have already all those precursors, the presets where, hey, this drug is this milligram, and you take it this many times a day. When you transition that into cannabis, the patients have to kind of figure that out, right? And there's different products, vaping, tinctures. There's the RSO when you take, and the edibles, ingestibles. So all those different things are going to determine, how quickly cannabis works, how long it works. So you have to kind of get a sense of like, okay, what does the patient need in terms of like how is it immediate relief? So if someone has anxiety, you're going to look for something that, hey, I'm starting to have a panic attack. Well, what product's going to work the best? Well, obviously you need something that's going to work quickly.
Yeah.
And one of the products would be, like vaping, so inhaling. It's going to work immediately. Beyond that, you're going to look at like, well, how long does it last? Like, okay, so if you're looking at something that, like chronic pain, right? You have it, it's going to be all day long. So you're not going to want to vape constantly, right? So yes, it works immediately, but then again, it's going back to the glaucoma thing where am I going to want to vape constantly to get that relief, or am I going to have another product that I'm going to be able to take that's going to, kind of dull that pain for the rest of the whole day versus just a couple hours. So when I was trying to think of, hey, how am I going to counsel these patients, going back to the traditional pharmacy um, aspect of it, it's like, okay, everybody is a human unless you're an alien from Jersey, right? Uh, everybody is going to everybody's going to take medication the same way, right?
Yeah.
There's only so many ways that your body can intake medicine.
Hmm.
And if we play off of that and look at the different products that are available in the market, how do those products affect, you know, the initial, like, how does it work? How fast does it work? How long does it work? What effect are you looking for? So kind of meshing all those together, and that's kind of how I got a little bit more comfortable in that aspect of cannabis.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure you definitely had like a heavy feedback, and it was cool that you were able to kind of get in with the company when it started, because I think it's really beneficial, especially for the med pros or someone that wasn't in the profession before, to be in the beginning. And it really paints like a bigger picture of one, the community sense of things, but two, it's like, what realm am I now breaking into? Because I feel like in the pharmacy type of world, it's already made. Like all those pathways have already been paved, and you're just coming into it. So I'm
Hmm.
sure it was kind of a nice refresher going from the monogamy that you were in, like dealing with what you're dealing with like the whole groundhog effect, to now being in like a fresh realm. And it's probably like boosting neurons again, because now you have to like rethink everything, relearn things, re-interactions. So that
Hmm.
definitely had to be a little bit of exciting for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I always, I always go back to the time when we first started and everything was just like, brand new, Wild Wild West. And it was like the most fun I've had at a job, like ever, because it was just like they let you go and hey, figure it out, do, like you said, learn on your own, figure it out, and go from there. And it was fun. I mean, we definitely a lot different than the traditional pharmacy setting. So
Yeah.
it took kind of took me back. Like I didn't know at first. I was a little timid. I'm like, am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to say this stuff?
Yep.
And now it's just like it's normal.
Yeah. No, I remember like consulting my med pros about like the language they're allowed to use, and it kind of exactly what you said, like how do I walk around or say these things, because I'm sure there were definitely barriers that you had to kind of watch out for in your past profession. I'm sure with just like how you say things to people or what interactions these drugs are going to have, because the interactions you were dealing with before, I feel like were way different than what you're dealing with now when it comes to cannabis. So you definitely have to feel like more of like a greater sense of dealing with your community, because now you're kind of hands on with the consulting side. When you saw that, what was it like seeing kind of just the new energy people were creating after weeks of working with them and then consuming cannabis? Like, did you find that correlated at all with how you saw people kind of heal using pharmaceuticals, or was it kind of more eye opening for you?
I mean, yeah, it did. It changed my whole perspective. Like when you look at, well, first off, whenever the patients came in, they were 100% grateful that we existed. Everybody
Yeah.
came in appreciating, like, hey, I'm so glad that the medical program allows us to do this. I've been waiting, you know, 20 years or whatever it is, to come in and be able to like use cannabis as medicine. And a lot of people would ask me in the beginning when I started working there, like, hey, how many percentage of the people come in just to get high or just to use it for just to get high? I'm like, actually, honestly, it's not, it's not that, it's not that obvious, right? You have,
Yeah.
I used to say it was like 90% of people that come in truly need cannabis as medicine. There's maybe 10% that maybe just would go in, just because they wanted to
Yeah.
use cannabis as psychoactively. But when as I progressed, I'm like, actually, honestly, 100% of the people that would come in truly need it for medicine. And there is an overlap of patients that like, hey, if I'm using it for medicine and then I'm also feeling good, using that psychoactive and feeling good about it, um, why not, right? So it shifted my mindset because in traditional pharmaceutical realm, you're looking at, opioids that like you're not supposed to use this to get high. You're supposed to use this to dull your pain, your chronic
Right.
pain, right? So
Yeah.
getting high, right, in terms of medicine is frowned on, right? You go to pharmaceutical like CVS and say, hey, I want this opioid and I want to feel good. You're like, I'm not feeling, yeah, I'm not going to fill this for you. That this is not what it's for, right? When you go into the dispensary, hey, my pain is a 10 out of 10 today, but I also like I've been feeling like crap. I want to feel better, right? That's 100% valid. That's what you go there for. So the
Yeah.
shift in mindset when you use cannabis as medicine versus like traditional pharmacy is totally different. And I think a lot of it has been ruined by the opioid crisis, right? You like
Yeah.
do not get high off of this stuff. Then then you're taking cannabis, you're like, oh well, I'm feeling I'm feeling the psychoactive effect. It's feeling good, but I'm also getting pain relief, getting anxiety relief, whatever, or it's helping me sleep, whatever it may be. That's still okay. So I have to like really coach people and say like, yeah, this might get you a little high, but um, that's normal. It's okay. It's okay to feel this way, not the other versus the other way around where like you take an opioid, you're getting high.
Yeah.
That's not what you want. You know what I mean?
But there's still a sensation. Like I've never done like I broke plenty of bones with like skating and snowboarding, and I guess I was prescribed medicine then. But I still like remember a sensation behind it that I can label as like getting high. So it's weird how people would associate it still negatively with cannabis as a medicine of like, well, I'm still getting high. When it's like, but yeah, even when you're taking an opioid or any type of pharmaceutical, you're still getting high,
Yeah.
you know? But it's weird that like just that language is the same, but that it's associated with one other thing that it has like a negative connotation to it,
Mm-hmm.
which I
Mm-hmm.
never really thought of until you're kind of talking about it in that language, which is so bizarre, you
Yeah.
know?
And that's the thing. It's like and another case would be patients would come in and we would always be their last line, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh man, I've been to X many 10 doctors and they've all told me that like this is I'm going to be on these meds for the rest of my life, and I'm very desperate. I don't want to be on opioids anymore. I don't want to keep taking this medication. And they would just and that was another difficult part is we our cannabis as medicine would be hanging on the thread of them using us as last line. So they're already
yeah,
desperate. These
yeah,
patients are already coming in desperate and they're like, I don't know what else to do. So we'd have to be really careful on explaining like, hey, look, this isn't the answer to everything, right? We can supplement what you're taking, maybe decrease the amount of medicine that you're taking currently, but it's not going to be like, hey, this is going to a miracle drug that's going to help you just not use anything at all. So it in the beginning it was a fine line of a lot of education where people had these misconceptions of, oh, now the program's open, we're good, I'm going to take this, I'm going to feel a million times better, not knowing that there was just the beginning of the journey, right? Like figuring out what products, what terpenes, what combination is going to help them at first, or and then trying to figure out the dose as well, like what's your tolerance level like, and then testing out different strains, testing out different products.
yeah,
I'm like, if you really are serious about doing this, it's going to be a 3 to 6 month process before you even
yeah,
get comfortable and feel that this is actually helping. Like this isn't just like, again, it's going back to the traditional pharmacy sense where patients would come in, they get a prescription from the doctor, you take something twice a day, and hey, come back to me in 3 months, your blood pressure is going to be fixed, right? It's not like that in the dispensary. They come in, all right, and especially as a new patient, well, let's start you off. We're going to start you off on the basic, like maybe a 1-to-1, CBD THC
yeah,
tincture, and let's start you off here, and on their mindset, they're like, "Oh, this is going to work." But in my mind, I'm like, "Okay, let's try it. If it works, we'll go from there. Like maybe you need more CBD, maybe you need more THC, maybe you need a different strain, different terpenes." So my mind is that like we have a long journey ahead of us. In their mind, they're like, "Ooh, this is the miracle drug. This thing is going to help me." So to get rid of that frustration and to get them to come back, you have to be like, "Hey, this is a journey. You have to be your own doctor. You have to write down you know what's your daily you know anxiety level, what's your daily pain scale, is it a constant 5, can we get it down to a 3, I'm not looking to get it to a 0, and all those different types of things. That was where I started to kind of collect the knowledge and the data, like, okay, as people came back, like, okay, did this work for you? Okay, no, well, let's go ahead and try this, because again, it you can't really you can't be a medical professional and say and work in the dispensary and say, hey, this is 100% guarantee going to help you. Like you have to kind of talk them through their own journey basically as a guide, and not as much as a a doctor saying, okay, take this twice a day, come back and see me in 3 months, we're going to be good. You know what I mean?
This episode is brought to you by Waddle, the world's fastest and easiest way to review and track your medicinal cannabis products. Waddle offers batch-specific reviews, so you'll know what to stash or what to trash. It's exclusively available for Pennsylvania medical cannabis patients. Waddle helps you take the guesswork out of your cannabis journey and ensures transparency with the verified product tracking. Download Waddle now on iOS or Android, that's WODL, and take control of your cannabis experience today. Yeah, and you definitely have to be a guide, especially on your side of things, because as much as they would talk to us in the dispensary, like the bud tenders, the managers, that side of which more I was on, it was more of the front lines of the med pro that I tried to drill into their head was just like dosaging. Because there's going to be people that are becoming in that never consumed THC before, and we have some products where if they misdose this, they're going to have a negative experience, and we're not doing what we came here to do, and it's going to turn them off to
Mm-hmm.
trying what they need to next, because exactly what you said in the words that I'd always use is it's such a journey, especially dialing in any type of like natural medicine. It's going to be a lot of trial and error, and a lot of like how your body interacts with it, because how I'm sure of what you learned, what you consume, what you're going to consume, and what I'm going to consume are going to be way different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, More so of what it'd be like where if you had to take a Tylenol and I had to take a Tylenol, we're pretty sure of those base effects are going to be the same. But when it
Exactly.
comes to like dealing with cannabis, you could take a hit of a joint and I could take a hit of a joint and we could have two different effects, which I think is like so important on the front line of the med side, is to work through it with the patients and kind of deal with that aggravation. Because I'm sure with a lot of people it's very irritating. Because I remember coming in, people being like, "Oh, well, I tried this tincture and like it didn't work," or
Yeah.
like I'm trying this and like it's just not enough. And it's like the med pro starting them on like a low CBD or something like that. When it's like, yeah, but we can't just tell you to take a dab right away.
Yeah.
You know, like we
Mm-hmm.
we can't do that, and they don't want to do that because they want you to be comfortable. So I'm sure you definitely dealt with kind of that trial and error, which definitely had to have been a little frustrating because you're used to kind of dealing with one, a side that's backed by insurance financially,
Mm-hmm.
um, and two, like you already had the pathway created. So how is that dealing with dosaging and new products and everything like that?
And that, yeah, dosaging, that was a big key. It's like, again, going back to what I've, learned and worked through in the past with the traditional pharmacy realm is, um, that the dosing was always key, and that's where I always brought back like, how can I use what I learned in a different setting, and transfer it into this setting, and dosing was always key. And the starting low and going slow was it's the motto, right? You got to do it.
Yeah,
And a lot of patients, again, they're at we are their last hope. So having somebody come in and saying, hey, you need to really dial in your dose. You got to start low, titrate, titrate up, and see what works for you. And being the last line for them, so they're like coming in at 100 miles an hour, and we're telling them, you gotta go back and to that stop sign, and now you got to start, at 0 miles an hour, and then gradually build yourself back up. A lot of patients didn't like that. It was very, it was like, well, that I don't like that. So, um, being able to like having them stop and like, hey, let's start from the beginning. That was a I wouldn't say it was difficult. A lot of patients were very open to it.
yeah,
But you can see the frustration because there is a small percentage of patients that like this. maybe this isn't the direction you need to go. Like maybe this isn't going to help you as much as you think it's going to help you. So there's always that other side to it. It's like, I can't say, hey, come on in. This is going to, 100% help you. So the other side of it is like, hey, even if you do everything the right way, you might not find the product that works is going to work the best for you. It might not exist yet, right? So our industries are constantly growing, new strains, a lot of grows that are growing amazing genetics that are coming out that we haven't really experienced yet. So there's something in the future that might be there,
Yeah.
or even extraction processes or the way, you know, different mechanisms that we're giving out to the patients. In the beginning we had, I think, like the transdermal patches,
Yep.
um, and I don't even know if they still are out there, maybe a few, but you know the idea of it works, but it
Well,
wasn't.
even the tech they were using when they first came out, it
Yeah.
wasn't completely there, and we weren't getting like a complete like transdermal,
Oh yeah, it wasn't the true.
you
You know what I
know?
mean? It wasn't true.
Yeah.
It wasn't the true thing. So, and again, one of the, like when we had them, it was like $30 for one patch, right?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
lasted what, a day?
Yeah.
That
And
doesn't
they
make
were like
sense to
50
people.
milligram patches, maybe, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah.
yeah. That kind of stuff doesn't work for people. So again, technology is always there's always innovations. They're always coming out. So it's not finalized yet. So it's there's still things that are still in development that are helping people. So um, it's a tough. It was tough at the beginning. Like, hey, right now you maybe this isn't the right path for you. But we'd always try to help them through.
Yeah. Yeah, in the beginning. So, like, I'm glad you just brought up the transdermals because I forgot how important they were in the start of the program in Pennsylvania because we pretty much had, we didn't have smokables yet. Maybe we had some concentrates, but when it first started, we pretty much just had tinctures, some capsules,
Hmm.
and some syringes. So when it came to one, financials, and two, dosages, anybody that came into it, especially on the med side, became very privy to something called RSO, which is known as the Rick Simpson oil. So I'm sure you being on your side, especially that we're gonna kind of start dabbing into the creation of the Control Limited device, you probably had to recommend a lot of RSO because we have a lot of people coming in. They can't spend a lot of money. They need a higher dose medicine. But here it's just some oil in a syringe, and they have no idea like
Yeah,
how do I use this? What is this? It tastes disgusting. And now you're telling me I need to take this like 2 or 3 times a day. So how did you combat that or kind of navigate that with new people?
man. I mean, at the beginning, I just I couldn't recommend it. It was it was limited to the people that I thought could handle it.
Yeah,
That I recommended to, and I'm pretty sure you've heard like a bunch of horror stories with RSO,
yeah.
of people using it, dispensing it, whatever it is. I mean, we've pretty much probably heard it all, but people just squirting the whole syringe, and like I had a patient come in. They're like, "Man, I had to go to the ER the other day," and we were like, "What happened?" Well, the one I my friend gave me some RSO the one time, and she just kind of squirted it in my mouth. I didn't see how much she gave me, and then I bought some. It worked. It worked really well. Then she ended up buying some, and then this basically trying to remember how much
Oh
did she squirt in
no.
my mouth, and it was just she's like it was pretty much almost the whole syringe. And it's RSO is for me in the beginning. I felt like RSO was one of the like I don't want to coin it the miracle drug, but it was like one of those things where it was super concentrated. It was when if you were able to divvy it out correctly, it
Yeah.
was one of the cheapest forms of cannabis as medicine out there. And I saw a lot of really good uses for it, but it was very difficult to recommend. And that's where we came kind of like as I was working with Dishy in the dispensary, I'm like, there has to be a better way. I mean, it's just an oral syringe, and I was like, coming from like traditional pharmacy, I'm like, I can't believe they're dispensing something like this that's this concentrated in just a regular syringe, and then giving it out to patients and hoping for the best, and then
Yeah.
on top of that, you know, the people that were coming in, what has been the recommendation for a dose, like a grain size,
Yeah. What does
and
that
it's like,
mean?
what I mean, I eat a lot of jasmine rice as an Asian, right? So,
Yeah.
but somebody else coming through, like, what kind of rice are they eating, right? So, there's long grain rice. So a grain of rice size is very anecdotal. It's just very user preference. Like, whoa, what's your grain size? And that was our motto in the beginning. Is like,
Yep.
what's your grain size? Like, so again, and then on top of that is like, how do you dispense a grain size with the syringes that they're giving you, right? They had these long plastic syringes. You had these short stubby ones, the
Yeah.
glass ones. I mean, there's so many different varieties that when patients would get it, it was just very difficult to just even recommend. In the beginning, I was like, hey, squirt some of it out on a piece of wax paper, put it in the freezer, and
Yeah.
then maybe you could try to like cut it up and then
Yep.
give yourself little doses of that. You know, depending on depending on the RSO product, what grower processed it. You have really really thick ones. You have
Mm-hmm.
like ones that are little like gummier.
Yeah.
So even the products itself varied. So it's very difficult to recommend RSO. And I was like, okay, there has to be a better way to be able to recommend a dose, dispense it consistently. That was the biggest issue, is being able to
Yeah.
consistently dispense the same amount. And that was our thing from the beginning, is like, RSO is great, and if you are able to get the patient to be able to consistently dispense, whether they are titrating up or getting that medicine to them, is my fear was like, hey, you got this RSO and you know that it's helping you, but from one day to the next, you don't know if you're getting the same amount, right? Just a tiny bit of a difference, you're going to upping your dose by like
Yep.
10, 15, 20 milligrams, and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
And at the price of RSO syringe at the time, I mean, even still, 70, 60, 70, $80,
Yeah.
some are a lot cheaper now, but if you over overshoot on the syringe, I mean, what are you going to do? Patients aren't going to be like, no, I'll save, I'll just leave that go, or I'll waste it, or I'll take it another day. They're taking that whole thing.
Yeah.
So that consistency aspect of it really played a part in how we were, got the wheel spinning. Like, how are we, what's our main objective? What do we, what do we want to do to fix this issue? Um, and going into it, we're like, okay, RSO RSO is very difficult. One, it's very viscous, right? To push it out of the syringe, it's very
Yep.
hard. The
Yep.
syringes that they're being put in, the thumb, the plunger tips are small, so patients with like neuropathies that really need it,
Yeah. Couldn't even.
pain, like arthritis,
Yeah.
they're not able to. I mean, and these are the people that need it the most, right? I mean,
Yep.
I'm not
Yep.
talking about patients that come in and squirting a whole syringe in a brownie batter to make brownies. I'm talking about patients that truly are using it for like cancer, arthritis, like deep chronic pains and things like that. So, um, you know, the oil was viscous. Pushing it out was difficult because of the hand dexterity, pain,
Yeah.
whatever it is, and then pushing out consistently, being able to push out the correct amount every single time, and then also the dosing recommendations. Like, okay, grain size. I mean, what's everyone's grain size? So our thought process was like, okay, if we can get something that consistently dispenses the RSO in regiments, and they're able to do it easily, right? They're able to push it out of the syringe easily. They're able to push out with their hands easy, and they're able to do it consistently. And also that consistency goes back to getting everybody on the same page with the grain size. So,
Yeah.
if we can say, hey, let's all agree that a grain size is, zero point zero 0.05 mLs out of the syringe,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or 0.025 is a half grain size. So if we can all agree and set that standard, we're kind of halfway there, right? We can have them dispense something consistently at a grain size. So we can say, hey, a
Yeah.
grain size is 0.05 mLs, which I kind of looking back into like the pharmaceutical side,
Yeah.
if you have 1 ml or 1 gram syringe and you
Mm-hmm.
divide that into 20 doses
Mm-hmm.
of the syringe, we saw that 0.05 would get you 20 doses, which is technically like a grain size. So that's where kind of we kind of came up with the volume that we would
Yeah.
use as a standard for our consistent, dispensing.
Yeah. That's perfect, man. Because I remember working with patients, and I would take like a piece of paper and draw the same kind of like with a protractor, almost draw the same size little circle, and I draw like 10 or 15 of them. And I'd be like, look, if you want to pre-dose all this, and going back to what you said with the wax paper in the freezer, try to squeeze some out and fill this like as much evenly as you possibly can, because we didn't have a device before to kind of like control or mediate that more. And then even before that, people can't squeeze it out. So then you have to be like, all right, I need you to heat some water up and place your syringe in some
Yeah.
warm water and liquefy it more. And then now people are even more confused and frustrated. So that's so cool that you're sitting in the dispensary with the mind that you have, seeing that there's an issue, and now trying to solve it, because dosaging with the RSO, that is probably one of there's plenty of issues that I have with cannabis, but when it comes to dosing on the medical side, that was one of my scariest things, just because you're dealing with such severities where you don't want to overdose them. Not that you can overdose someone with weed, but you don't want them to have that negative experience. So, what's it like? So, you broke down, you saw kind of the measurements that you need, and now you're partnering up. So, how do you find your partners? Because now you have it in your head, like what you want to create, right? So then what were the steps after that?
Yeah, so pretty much the steps after that, because going, I was like, Dishy, we needed like start thinking of something. I actually started making like our original idea was, and actually what's on the market now is basically the push plunger design where we have like the little safety clip, and then you're only able to
Yeah,
push a certain amount. We actually have a second product that's coming out too. Is the twist, the turn dial. Basically, you're
sweet.
able to
I
twist.
think that's the one that I saw, because I've been looking it up more and more. So I wonder if that's the one that I saw. Because in my head, I'm picturing like the turn dial thing. It
There,
looks like it was controlled on how far that you're able to plunge it. Is that
yeah. I mean,
correct?
there is actually another device out there that is the same thing, or similar. But again, going back to like the start of the like our company is picking out. My cousin had I knew my cousin had a 3D printer, and
Nice.
he he has like he has his mechanical engineering degree. He has an MBA in healthcare sciences. So I was like, I reached out
Nice.
to Soph, and I was like, hey, I got this idea. I was like, this is what I want to do. I was explain the whole like I gave him this hour long kind of like breakdown, like okay, and he again
Yeah.
he doesn't use it, he's never used it, and I'm like, hey, this is what cannabis is, this is what we're doing with it, this is how it works, is this is RSO, like the whole thing, and I'm like, this is my idea. I want to be able to create a device that we're able to consistently dispense this RSO, this oil. It's very
Yeah.
hard, and I was like, we can the obvious. I mean, again, there's if you think about it, like there's always obvious answers. Like, hey, well, why can't you just do like something where you just twist it out, right?
Yeah.
And we're just like, well, yeah, let's just do something like that. And then, but again, it's a simple idea, but the actually doing it is very difficult, right? So
Yeah.
we're like, well, how do you make something, manufacture it, and then be able to like make money off of it? Like, where, how do what is this, how much is it going to cost? Like, anybody can say, hey, I'm going to make this brand new pen, and you're going to be able to put oil in it, and it's going to do all these extra features. But then
Yeah.
when it comes down to like actually manufacturing it, sending it out somewhere, okay, well, how many parts does it take? Can you injection mold this thing? Like, what do you this device? Like, do you need metal? Do you need springs for it? Like, is it like very is it difficult to manufacture? That was the other key piece when I reached out to Soph. It's like, okay, we have to make something that is going to do everything that we want, but also be manufacturable. Like, you can
Yeah.
think of like this crazy idea where like I'm going to make this pen and this is going to dispense. So then after I make this pen, how much am I going to be able to sell it to, dispensaries or sell it to the growers for, right? If I make this pen, it's going to cost them $10 and they're selling, the RSO for X amount, like it's not going to be worth it.
No.
So the way that we thought of it is like, hey, we need to we need to figure something out that we can do that's not going to interrupt the grower, the processor's way that they're going to dispense it, right?
Yeah.
So we thought like, our original idea was a brand new device, brand new pen, and we're like, we can't do that. It's too much money. It's going to be too much to manufacture, too much to process. So we're like, how can we make um, how can we make something that goes right into the manufacturing process, how they fill it, and be able to do it cheap enough that they would take us on, and all this stuff. So that's where we ended up with like a Cadillac of device, and then we broke it down to the simple parts of it. Like, okay, we have this kit that you're going to be able to retrofit onto the syringe that's already out there, so they're not going to
Yeah.
have to change any way. So however the grower processor is filling the RSO right now, they don't have to change that process.
Yeah.
We're gonna create something that comes on after you have dispensed it in there, and it's gonna make everything else easier. What we're looking for. So that was like kind of like the pinnacle of like the idea of what we wanted to like what we can actually make, and that's where we came up with the ideas of like um, the plunger and all that stuff. So it was kind of like, I mean, it was, I would say like a year and a half plus of just going through different iterations. I mean, we went through, it's funny when I think back to like all the different ideas that we've had coming up, leading up to the very final product. It looks
Yeah.
so, it looks so simple. You look at
Yeah.
it, you're like, oh man, that's easy. Like it's simple. You have those notches, you have these lines on there, and it's easy. It's why didn't I think of this, right? But to
Yeah.
get there, right, it's like the easiest solution has the most complex thing to get there, right? And our iterations leading up to that, um, it was a process in itself. I we originally made the plunger only being able to dispense 20 doses because, I mean, these um, the increments are so small
Yeah.
that to be able to have a plunger in that size, be able to increment that much space was very difficult to do. Like, we can't we can't put these notches that close together because it's not going to be worth it. You just have a bunch of these little, almost like, gears on there, and it for
Yeah.
a human, for a person, especially older patients, to be able to see these, like where to do it, it's going to be difficult. But so we started with just 20 doses on there. I flew out to California, talked to, a bunch of companies, and kind of got feedback. They're like, well, we're telling our customers on the West Coast, they're able to get, 40 to 50 doses out of these syringes. And I'm like, 40 to 50, how are you doing that? Like, how, you know what I mean? And basically all they're doing is telling them to squirt just a tiny amount. So,
Yeah.
that the trip over to Cali, I'm like, okay, how can we not even compete with it, but how can we get close to that? Like, how, right now our device is just a plunger with a clip on it that has 20 slots on it, and we're like, how do we even compete with that? So that led us into the second iteration of, and our final one that we have out right now is like, we actually have um, 20 doses on either side of there. It's a square. I should have brought my kit, but we have 20 doses on every side of the plunger, but
Yeah,
the one side is half stepped up. So you
I
can go
gotcha.
from one, if you stay on the one side, it's going to be 20 doses. If you keep going, half stepping over, it's going to be a half dose. So then we're like, oh, now we have the 20 or 40 doses. We have the full grain or the half grain
Nice.
size doses on the plunger. So, um, you know, that that took we I mean, even going getting to that point was we had we try to modify the clip, right? Okay, what if we put a notch on the clip to like maybe half space it? We like all these different
Yeah.
things. Finally came up with the final iteration, but again, it was a process. And Soph, and here's the thing, like luckily Soph had a 3D printer and a really good 3D printer to be able to like pump out
Yeah. Yeah.
hundreds of iterations. Otherwise, we would have had to send it out to
Oh
whatever
man.
company, right?
Yep.
Have them 3D print it, have them send it back,
Send it back. Oh
pay
yeah.
them, because we actually did that. We actually tried to like do some iterations. We thought like this big company would it be able to 3D print the plungers better than what we were doing in house, and it turns out it was the same, like the same quality. So we're like, you know, and then we got a sense of how much we would have paid
Yeah.
to get the R&D done, versus doing it in house. And that was like we were like, man, basically Soph with his 3D printer saved us millions of dollars in just in just iterations alone, just
Oh,
printing those
100%.
out. Yeah,
Well, not even that, but just time saved.
yeah,
You know what I mean? From because having to deal with just the communication of R&D and other companies in the creation, let alone the time that you're doing it in, like like it wasn't the best time to kind of get everything, like inventory maintenance control wasn't the best. So that's so cool that you're able to kind of network in-house, let alone family, and
yeah,
get that done and be more hands-on, because that had to have been even more beneficial because you can kind of see it happening and be like, no, that's not going to work. Or
man,
right away, like, now I see why it's not going to work. And you don't have to wait 2 weeks to send it back to maybe the guy reads your email to then having to like re explain your email.
mm,
Um, that's so
yeah.
cool. So how long, how many, you said that took about like a year and a half, a year?
Yeah, I mean, it took about a year and a half, and then and then on top of that, we had to find a manufacturer to be able to like actually print these out for us. So
Yeah.
that I mean that was like, what are we gonna do? So we luckily Dishy's brother-in-law um, worked for a manufacturing plant that's based in Baltimore, but had plants in China. And he
Wow.
was actually, I mean, again, it's all came
This is
together. It's like,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So he was like, yeah, I can check this out. So we were able to give the 3D printed, like we had to finalize it with a 3D print, like, hey, does this work? We had, and again, Soph, when he printed out our plungers and our clips, he was like, okay, he printed out three different clearance, not three different. I think it was like he narrowed down to five different clearances,
Yeah.
and we're like, okay, so how does this feel? Like, how does this feel on your hand? How does it feel putting into pushing the clip on? And then we had to test, like test it out, and then finally we um, sent that data over to her brother-in-law. He looked at it and was like, okay, sent the specs over, over to China, had them, you know, uh, do the mold and then that whole process and then bring it back, and we're able to get it done. But man, if you want to start something from fresh and doing that was it, it's
Yeah.
if we didn't have the connections, again, that was another piece that we're like, if we didn't have that at the time, we would have been spending hundreds of thousands to try to figure that out as well.
Yeah, and I mean, all the signs were there that you were at the right time doing the right thing, because the
Yeah,
way that it sounds that everything was falling into place, like you definitely were supposed to make this. You had it
yeah.
going
Oh
on.
yeah. I mean, there's so many like little different things that like pop through. We the other thing that I forgot to mention was the warmer. Did you see our warmer, the thing that
No.
hangs off? So there's like it's a clip that hangs off to the side of a mug, and then you put
Okay.
the syringe in there. So the first grower that brought it was Pharmaceutical RX. So
Okay, cool.
everybody thinks it's from Pharmaceutical RX, but it was actually from us. But
Nice.
anyways, one of the issues again was it's you can't one, it was difficult to take the cap off because of
Yeah.
the oil kind of locking it up, and the other was
Yep.
being able to push it out. Again, like you said, you had to warm it up, put it in warm water, whatever. So we actually, I forget, I can't even think of how we came up with the idea, but we, oh, you know what it was? We were like, let's do, I want to do like a giveaway, like because we were again marketing, like all that was all in house. So we're like, I want to do a giveaway, and what if we created like a mug that had a little slot for the RSO syringe that you can pour like hot tea into the mug, and then it would actually warm up the syringe, almost like a warmer, you know what I mean? Like,
Genius.
right? So we're like, so then like the next day Soph was like, hey, how about this? So he came up with like this little, it was like had like prongs on it, and it just hung off the side of a mug, and you would just put the syringe in it, and he's like, we can just put it on any mug. I'm like, that's perfect. So it was like, so we ended up like, doing a bunch of iterations of that just to kind of like fit as many of the syringes in the market as we could. Like again, there's
Yeah.
short, stubby ones and long ones.
Yeah.
So we ended up coming up with that warmer idea. We're like, okay, this would be a cool like giveaway, cool like swag giveaway, where again we just hand out these like little clips. You put the syringe in there, put it on a hot mug where you again creating that routine. Like you
Yep.
drink coffee in the morning, you put it there, you drink your coffee, you dose your RSO, you're able to like open up the cap easy. It's
Yeah.
warmed up, you're able to dose it a lot
Oh,
easier
it's genius, man.
consistently. So it all came a part of the whole process of dosing RSO, and then it ended up creating its own kind of like its own routine, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was another concept that we were thinking of. Was like, okay, everything else in cannabis has like it has a routine, right? So you
Yep.
get flower, you have to
Yep.
grind it, you have to roll it, whatever you do,
The
or
rituals.
the rituals,
Yeah.
everything, right? And like with RSO, there is no ritual. It's
Yeah.
just like, hey, here's a syringe, warm it up, good luck, right? So we
Yeah.
were just
Get
like, let
irritated.
yeah, so let's create a ritual. Let's do like, okay, so first let's you have to warm it up, right? We give you the device, you put the syringe in there, warm it up with your coffee or tea. If you're dosing it in the morning, do it as a ritual. You make your coffee, warm up your RSO, and then now you're able to um, consistently dispense it a little easier,
Yeah.
right? It's easier to push. It's not as hard. Again, hand dexterity issues, patients that um, don't have that the muscle to push it down. So creating that ritual, putting in the warmer, and then having our device to do it consistently. It just brings everything together. So that was our kind of like one of our marketing things is like, okay, education is huge, right? We have to educate on creating that ritual, being able to like understand, tell patients and educate patients on, hey, everything else has a ritual. If you're also buying flour, you have to prep that flour, right? You're not
Yeah.
just going to pull the flour out and be able to utilize it, whatever you're doing with it. So why not think of RSO as the same way, right? You can't just buy RSO and then just all of a sudden squirt it out and use it. So creating that ritual was one of our key components to making sure that our kit had a better success rate. So that was big play in that sense.
Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. No, I didn't know anything about the clip, so I can't wait to
Yeah,
look that up because that
yeah,
is genius. When I hear about more stories of just like innovations in cannabis, newer ones, because it's like coming into this space, finding a problem, creating a solution. So it's so cool to learn about how everybody's mind kind of creates these solutions and how it like comes to like that's part
yeah,
of Terp Trends. It's just interviewing the people that gave us cool devices on what we're gonna use every day. Um, that's so sick, man.
yeah. It was like the best part of it was like those aha moments. You're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
like that actually, like that's a perfect idea. Like warm it, being able to have somebody be able to warm it up easier, right? I mean, again,
Mm-hmm.
you can run it under hot water and do it yourself and not need the device or not need
Yeah.
the clip, but it just makes it easier. It gives you a ritual. It gives you something to like, be able to do.
It's efficient.
Um, yeah, it's efficient, part of the
Yeah.
process.
So you have it
So,
created. Now we have a model. It's in hand and something cool to go with it. You're doing giveaways. How was the feedback dealing with it? Did
um,
you team up with dispensaries or how did all that work then?
so I mean, it was a grind. I mean, we were out there, and that was the other part of it that was, very enjoyable is going out to like the Canifest and just like talking to
Sweet.
the you know all the people in the marketing that were in it. And I mean, I made so many cool friends, like met so many cool people during that whole time. It's like, hey, we're Control. This is what we're doing with our RSO. Um, and this is our idea. This is what we're doing. And everybody, like, the reception was 100%. They're like, this is
Yeah.
needed. Everybody needs this. Um and it was cool to hear. So that's what kept us going. Like it like, oh man, this is a great idea. It's going to help, a lot of people. So it kept us going and pursuing, what we thought was like, again, when we're in it, deep dive in it, you're always in your own world, so you never
Yeah.
know what the outside world sees it. And when we were reaching out and people were like, oh, that's cool. It's, it was a good feeling. And like I said, being able to reach out and talk to all the everybody that was in the different grower processors, all people in marketing there. It was fun, just getting to hang out with them, talking to them, and just kind of seeing them on a regular basis. Like we would drive out to pop ups and say, "Hey, what's up?" Just hang out and talk and just do all that stuff. So, you know, product in hand, we were reaching out and like they trying to climb up the ladder to talk to the right people and getting the feedback that we needed. It was, but the hard part on that was getting the right people and being able
Yeah.
to like, hey, this is good. I want to buy this. And that's
Yeah.
where it was very difficult because when we initially went into the market, we're like, you know, I, we were thinking like, I don't. This isn't going to be a hard. This shouldn't be a hard sell, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you want to sell your RSO, and right now you don't have you just have it in a syringe, it's very difficult to dispense. Like we have something that's going to help that.
You definitely
And
you cornered that market like greatly.
yeah, and again, that's what we're trying. Like we thought that was an easy sell, but when we were talking to the different grower processors, um, money, like they're like, oh man, I don't know, you guys don't have any like any background with it. There's no sales, and
Yeah.
that was the part where like we need somebody to pick us up, and we just need to figure out, um, we just need to figure out who would fit us that would pick us up. That way, we would be able to get the sale. That would be able to prove our concept. Proof of concept was huge, but we just needed somebody to get on, and that's
Hmm.
where, you know, finally we were able to jump on with Perea. Perea,
Sweet.
yeah. So it reached out. It was going to pop ups, going to events, and I actually ended up talking to Nate, who's with Perea, and we just had a really good conversation. He, brought me up the chain. I ended up getting introduced to Abe, who's the head the lead extractor at Perea,
Cool.
and
Yeah.
he saw the value, um, and was able to take us on, which we were much appreciated. I still have daily conversations with Abe,
Oh,
talking about other
cool.
stuff, but
Shout out Pareja, dude.
yeah. And when Abe showed me the process that he makes RSO, I'm just like,
Yeah.
I was amazed. Like, I mean, and the RSO, I don't know if you haven't gotten to try any of the Prey RSO yet, but the way that he makes it, it dissolves. I mean, you technically the only time that you have to warm it up is to get the cap off. It does get a little tight, but
Yeah.
beyond that, like it's almost like it's not as viscous, it's not as thick as some of the other
Nice.
RSOs, so it pretty much dissolves immediately. It works really well with our device.
Yeah, that's cool. And then have you Did you run into any troubles when you're dealing? Because obviously, like you said, there's different sizes of applicators, like different brands were using different plungers and everything like that. Did you run into any difficulties off the bat dealing with that? Or did you feel like you kind of had that solved by the time you launched?
No, I mean that was one of our main of our main difficulties was when we decided to make the kit and retrofit it back onto the syringe. We
Nice.
did like we couldn't make three or four different molds to fit every syringe, right? We had to
Yeah.
choose a syringe and go with it. And what we did was we ended up choosing the glass barrel syringes, the
Okay.
the the not the stubby ones, but the
The
next
longer
one up.
ones?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we decided to go with that. One because it's glass, it's inert. It could store RSO a lot easier, a lot better. It's not plastic, so we thought that um, if we just stuck with that and we try to convert any of the grower processors, if they did have plastic syringes to convert to glass,
Yeah.
it might be an easier conversation. But when we reached out and we found that, the companies that were using the the plastic syringes versus the glass ones, there's there's a big difference in price, right? With
Yeah.
glass versus plastic. So that was a hard sell on our part to for that switchover. So that's where like we kind of hit a roadblock where we were reaching out to the companies. They're like, we have these syringes already. They work okay, to our knowledge, and we don't want to switch over because the price difference is big. You're looking at probably twice as much in terms of like
Wow.
cost.
Plastic compared to
You know,
glass?
yeah, yeah. So it was difficult, and it still is difficult. So
Yeah.
there's still companies that use the glass ones, and that's who we kind of like mainly approach first. But that transition from plastic to glass is a hard is a hard sell, especially when your margins are tight.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
supply chain.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they're getting it, you know, thousands of them for X amount of dollars, and we're coming in like, hey, if you want to use our product, you have to switch over. One, you have to buy our product, and two, you have to buy the glass syringes
Yeah.
that are more expensive too. So, again, it's one of the growing pains. It's you have to kind of be able to convince um, the companies that hey, this is worth it. But right now, with Perea, they just launched a couple months ago. We're collecting data, so hopefully that proof of concept is coming out, and we're able to kind of pursue more after
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, so it's exclusively with Parea right now in
Yeah,
PA.
right now it's just with Perea. Yeah.
Sweet. And now are people is that the only way that people are gonna be able to use it, or is there a way people can buy these kits somewhere else? Or are we
No,
still in the
right now we were thinking about launching it just to buy like be able to buy it like off our website just to get the kit and be able to retrofit it on your own if you buy a grower that has the glass syringes.
Yeah.
Um, but it's difficult to do to think it's more logistical and like uh, uh, more I'm thinking missing the word uh, well, to sell it to directly to patients, it's more of a risk.
Yeah.
So not a risk in terms of like if they're going to use it correctly, but just more of a risk for our company. We would rather just piggyback off of
Yeah. Oh,
the
for sure.
yeah
Until the solid data, which I don't think is gonna come back negatively at all, is out there, probably the safest way to do it.
yeah yeah.
And then
I mean
branch into other processors, you
yeah
know. Yeah. That'd be sweet. That's so you think that's the goal then for you guys?
yeah. Right now, our goal is collect as much data as we can.
Yeah.
Um, you know, get 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 the feedback and see where we land. Again, I'm pretty sure it's going to be good feedback. It, when we were developing it, we have to think of all the negatives
Yeah.
ahead of time. Like okay, well, this is we don't like I don't like this. Nothing is going to be like 100% like hey, this is 100% of exactly what we wanted. Here you go.
Yeah.
It's like okay, this is what we landed with. This is what we have. considering all the other factors, all the other iterations, this is what we landed with. We know that there, you know, might be some issues, but you, you can't solve 100%, right? You can't
Yeah.
reach 100% of the community and be able to like say, hey, everybody that's going to use this is going to be able to use it correctly and go from there. So that's where we kind of had to let go a little bit and say, okay, it's in the market now. Let's see how it goes. What the feedback is, and then have it come back.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said it's been out for about 3 months or so?
Yeah, it's been out. I think October, November is when they launched it. So,
Nice.
from what I understand, it's pretty good feedback so far. And
Awesome.
I think most of it, again, has to do with the way that Abe, processed that RSO. Uh,
Yeah.
I, it's
I'm gonna have to buy some just to try it out.
Yeah, like I said, one, it dissolves pretty quickly. And doing so, it actually starts the onset of action with this particular RSO that he made is pretty quick. I'd say within like 15 minutes.
Really?
It lasts pretty long too.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, it's if you'd have to get Abe on one of your
Yeah.
podcasts and have
Yeah.
him go through the process. He can explain it way better than me, but
Oh, I'd
um,
love that, man.
though yeah, they're Abe and Chris, their team over there. I mean, they do awesome work, but the way that they processed it, I mean, again, it's like almost 10-15 minute onset of action, lasts pretty decent amount of time. Typically for me, RSO maybe like 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
Um, I'd say when the first time I used it was their Rainbow Road. It was like 8+ hours, and I'm like, well, when is this gonna go away? Like because it was like the effect was just I was like, this is long. I was not expecting it.
Oh,
So
that's great. Yeah. Yeah, that's exciting stuff, man. Nice. Well, real quick, how much time do you have? Because we're already
I
at
got
an hour.
I got all the time, man. I got plenty of time.
All right, cool. So what's this stuff with the St. Joe's things that you mentioned before we talked on? Is there anything you can talk about on that or?
Right now it's still in the process, still in the works.
Yeah.
So we haven't really secured anything 100%, but we definitely like the aspect of research and being able to think about how um, how the industry can get better. I
Yeah.
mean, there's always different parts and different aspects of the industry um, that can always improve, and I think um, there right now there are universities that are studying a lot of cause and effect relationships between cannabis and patients, right? You give
Oh,
them
nice.
X amount of capsule, whether it's a combination of THC, CB, whatever. How does this make them feel? There's other studies that are getting done that are really doing really well,
Yeah.
but the concept that we were looking at is what about the other side? And the people at St. Joe are really really adamant and really good about thinking about like, okay, what's the social impact of cannabis? How can we, like, are there patients that need it that aren't getting it? How far are these patients traveling? Right, I'm pretty sure that you see patients drive an hour or 2 hours to
Oh,
find
yeah.
a specific strain that works for them.
Yeah. Or a
Um,
discount. I feel like more
or
people travel for the discounts too, you
discounts,
know?
yeah. I mean, so there's other aspects besides how does it make somebody feel, like what is the therapeutic effect of this. All that stuff is being done already, and being done by multiple universities and things like that, but I think what we're looking at, that's those studies are nice, but I think what we're trying to like pursue is what are the social impacts. How do we get these patients educated. A lot of it is you can have the best products, you can have the best outcomes, but if they're not educated on how to use it the right way, correctly, or how to um, you know, understand how it does affect you,
Yeah.
it's not going to work. The same thing with RSO. Like you can have the best RSO in the world, and if someone's going to just squirt it out into their mouth, it's not. You know what I mean?
It's game
it's no
over.
good. It's no good. So
Yeah.
where are the education gaps coming from? I mean, a lot of the uh, a lot of the laws put into place in terms of how grower processor, how dispensaries, how people in marketing can talk about products
It
is very
it's
limited.
very it's so irritating.
Yeah, it's very limited. So, what is the impact of that, right? Like like is there a way that you can not circumvent, but work alongside DOH and be able to like, hey, like there has to be a way that patients can get educated in maybe a different way, or what are those all those types of things
Yeah.
is still left in the open. And,
Yeah.
and I think putting a pharmacy school involved in that, they have a lot of other programs like occupational therapy, that could help. So we actually worked with them for one of our studies, and they involved occupational therapy. Like, okay, so does our device do what it's supposed to do? Is it easier? Is it actually easier for patients that have hand dexterity issues or can't see very well, or all these other things? Can they use this product? And even beyond our product is like going back to just the simple syringe itself is okay. State of PA. We ran an experiment on using a regular syringe to dispense this thick viscous solution or oil out of this syringe here. you know are they are they able to push out consistent amounts of it? In If you look at it from the outside and say no, that's very difficult to do, but there's no studies on it. You know what I mean? Like, same thing with like, vaping. Like, okay, you're gonna tell somebody, okay, vape for 2 seconds, vape for 3 seconds. Like, can you actually know that they're gonna do that exactly? So there's stuff that we think we know, like, okay, this is RSO is difficult to dispense, RSO is difficult to use, but let's test it. Let's put some science behind it. Let's put some study behind it, and see, um, through user data, is this true? You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
that's where with our device, and using a college, a pharmacy school, and being able to incorporate other other studies into it, and being able to
Yeah.
see like, okay, well, pharmacy, we deal with dosing, we deal with educating people how to titrate and all this stuff, but then the other aspect is, okay, how does a person use it after we tell them this is how you dose it? Can they do it? Are they, is something else holding them back? So a lot of side issues, side play that we can kind of study and gather data on, that maybe necessarily some other places aren't doing, or maybe they are doing it, but at a different scale. So that's where our thing with St. Joe's is nice. Um, gotcha. But yeah, that's where like our we want we want some like good solid data to be able to like prove our points, and go from there. And again, going beyond RSO itself, and let's look at other products as well. So it's nice to be able to put some numbers and some data behind what we're doing.
Oh yeah, I think that's awesome. Especially like you said, more on the impacts like the societal plays on this. I think that's even more important. So that's cool. So besides your device and in testing all that, do you guys have anything else that you're gonna put to study that you want, or what else are you brewing up?
Again, that's up in the air. We're talking and just trying to figure out like, okay, well, what's the low lying fruit? Like, what can we study? What can we take a look at and see what's going to benefit patients the most? And I think right now it's a lot of data collecting,
Yeah.
and again, that's difficult too, right? You can't just go into a dispensary and be like, hey. like what do you think your patients have the most difficulty with, and let me get some data points and stuff like that. That's hard to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So anything in that sense is all volunteer based, and um, you know, getting that kind of info. But I think being able to determine a lot of those factors in the future is going to just help propel the you know the market, help propel the state actually.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is going to be education, and alongside with education, you're just going to need data. Because if you're going against anything that's not like a natural medicine, so the basic pharmacology medicine, they have so much data that backs up on their evidence on why they can make these things or why it's
Mhm.
proven. They may have a lot of data that's, under the rug, but they do have data that's proven on why this works that we don't really have yet for cannabis. And I think we still have a lot of users that are scared because there isn't data. Because some people, like, that's just how they make their decisions in life, and they're still breaking down these stigmas and these taboos that we still have associated with using cannabis as medicine because the data is not necessarily there. So that's cool
Yeah,
that you guys are working, especially with like universities and other companies that have such a backing to kind of break that down and push it out more because your word is going to go way more than some guy who's just like smoking a joint and talking to his family. We need some higher names and just like more medical backing to prove the medicinal value of it.
yeah, no, for sure. It's again, a lot of it is our hands are tied with legislation.
Yeah. And
Cannabis
the
being
DOH.
yeah, cannabis being what it is, and until rescheduling happens and we don't even know what's going on with that. It just a lot of things that I think were rushed. When the program started, that the state is still trying to not necessarily like not knowing, but just trying to figure out.
Well, it's still
It
so fresh,
Yeah,
you know?
it's still fresh.
Yeah, it's very, but we've come a long way. There's
Yeah,
some things where I'm like, I can't believe we're not there yet. But then I go back to like when the program just started, and I'm like, dude, be so grateful. Like, because
yeah,
it is better than some programs. It's not the best, and we can only be optimistic that they, you know, pave a better program for when we do reach adult use, in the
yeah,
state, which hopefully they do.
yeah. I think
Because
I'm sorry.
no, keep going, go for it.
No, I think the PA program is great. Honestly, um, you're right. It is a nice program. It's still
Yeah.
fresh.
Yeah, it's still really fresh, and I'm glad the prices have come down a lot since it first started. We have a wide range of cannabinoids that people are able to access, and way different ways to consume because it was so challenging to navigate those beginning years in the PA program and just having it being a positive movement. Everyone was very receptive to it, but I'm sure there were a lot of negative experiences, maybe just because we weren't able to maybe the language just wasn't there or the barriers to break down to that patient weren't there. So I'm hoping, well, I'm glad to keep hearing that it's doing such a positive thing, talking to all the other med pros and everything like that, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
when I took the trip over to Cali, I think it was back in like 2022. Maybe it was 21. I was thinking like, they've had the market for a while, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, there has to be some advancements. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? There has to be some way that they're doing that's different than what we're seeing over on the East Coast. And
Mm-hmm.
surprisingly, especially with the RSO, I'm like, hey, how do you guys, what are you guys doing with RSO? Like, how are you guys explaining how to use it? Is there any devices or is there any things that you guys are doing? And it's the same. They're just dispensing it in a
Yep.
syringe the same way. They're still advising grain size. So nothing has progressed. So again, I feel like we're still new, and it's not just the East Coast. It's not just PA. It's
No.
still everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So there's still room. There's still a lot of room to grow, and just even using California as like an example is like I thought they were going to be way ahead in
Ahead of
terms
it.
of yeah, in terms of innovation, not in terms of like just genetically growing things, but in terms of just devices and just how to utilize certain products.
Yeah. No, I think it's kind of more concentrated here because we have such a concentration on medicinal use.
Hmm.
because we just have to operate under those parameters. Where over there, yeah, it was medicinal, but it was a very heavy, just like rec market, black
Yeah.
market. So I don't
Yeah.
think there was a much concentration on having to find that niche. That maybe it's a blessing that we did have such a concentration on such a medical side for minds like yours to kind of see it and then come in and create such a product that does. It's going to enhance anybody's use. Um, like anybody that uses RSO has definitely had frustrations with it across the
For
board.
sure. Yeah.
So it's when I first heard of shout out to my buddy Chris when he told me about what you guys were doing. He's like, you gotta talk to these guys. Like it's really cool. And then I dug into it. I was like, yeah, that is so cool.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful that someone found that and then merged that gap. And that's what's so cool about this cannabis community. And I'm sure what you've experienced too. Um, the community's so just tight here, and
Oh,
once you're doing
yeah.
something positive for it, like the feedback and like the open arms that you've probably experienced was probably a great feeling from stepping over from the other side. Because you walk two sides of medicine now, I'm not going to say
Mhm.
which one's the light and which one's the dark, but it's cool to see it, man.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I could tell you which side's the dark side. And again, it's not that, traditional pharmaceutical stuff doesn't have its place in time, but working in it for so long, you see where the follow the money, basically, right? Just
Yeah.
just follow it and see where things are going and see like what things are being recommended and suggested and see where again, I'm hoping that the cannabis industry doesn't fall into that same track. um you know but it's I think the our saving grace in the cannabis industry is it's still very personal.
Yeah.
Whatever dose, whatever strain, whatever product that you use is going to be personal to you, which is nice, because you as a user are able to pick and choose what's going to work the best for you, and that's still the biggest key and the biggest factor that makes cannabis so great. I think is because yeah, it might be a learning curve in the beginning to be able to figure out like what's going to work the best for you. But when you find that and they're able to dial it in, I've seen people be able to dial in what they're using and be able to help them, like truly help them. And once
Oh
you get
yeah.
to that spot, it's like, you're sitting at the top and you're just like, this is where I should be. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Versus that frustration of not knowing. And I think it's once you get over that initial frustration of you know logging what you're taking, writing down all the cannabinoids and terpenes and stuff like that, and once you figure that out and dial it in, like, oh, this is what I this is for me, this is what I need. um People are, it works, and that's what I
Yeah.
tell people. It's that initial kind of like punch in the face where like this isn't like what you're used to. Don't come from taking regular pharmaceuticals and then expecting the same thing. Like, you got to do your work. You're your own doctor. You're
Yep.
gonna be evaluating yourself in 3 to 6 months, not the doctor, right? You're not going to go back to the doctor. You get your medical card, you figure it out, reevaluate yourself in 6 months. Is this working for me? Yes. Keep going, right? So
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I think I first saw it. I mean, I'm sure you saw it when you're working with the patients and them coming back and seeing the quality of life return. But there was a situation in our dispensary where we had a patient and he always had to, so he had a brain injury at a young age and he always had a helmet and he dealt with like severe brain, I don't know if they were on like seizures or whatever, right? So I've been working with him for about a month or so and we were dialing in a tincture. So we were taking the RSO, diluting it down into different tinctures so they could kind of save some money because I was trying to save him money that way. Um, and he ended up having a seizure in the middle of one of his purchases, and we had a full room. So I had three or four other bud tenders in there also with patients. Um, and he started going into a seizure, like full on seizure on the ground. Uh, and it was one of those fight or flights. So I get behind and I'm helping, I'm holding his head, and his caretaker, his mother at the time, was able to break out his care package and get the tincture in his mouth,
Yeah.
and let it sit there. And Seth, within like 30 to 45 seconds, the kid was out of his seizure.
Dang.
And like quality of life, like you could see it like soul like return.
Yeah.
And I looked at everyone, I said, as scary as that is, you all just witness what this plant will do. So I want you all to like reflect on that, you know.
Yeah.
And it's nuts to see, and ever since then I won't advocate for anything else, you know, because it's like until you see it, you don't
Yeah.
understand it. So I'm sure for you being in a different field and dealing with people and feeding them something else and then getting into here, like that had to feel great, man. So I applaud
Yeah.
you for taking that jump.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's it, that story. Like, I wish Dishy was on. She could tell you almost mirrored the same thing, right? Same same scenario. Somebody we had at our dispensary had started having a seizure, and her husband had came out and like opened it up, squirted the RSO in there, and she was like just immediately
Yeah.
came out of the thing. I'm just like, it's crazy. You don't see that in regular retail,
No.
pharmacy. So it was nice to see, and I think that's what pushed Dishy over the edge in terms of 100% true believer.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great. I'd love to talk to her sometime.
Yeah,
That'd be sweet, you know. Well, we got an hour and a half, man. I think that was great. Seth, dude, thank you so much for taking time, especially on the holidays, and getting on an episode with us.
yeah. Thanks.
Let's see here.